Hello students, Eric Magidson here with a solution video. This is part one for the basic functions lab that we did. I wanted to make sure that you had the solutions and a demonstration of each formula so that you could use it to study for your exam. So let's get started with the first sheet. These are basic formulas. I'm going to do just the first column. In doing the first column, I can see that there's no black that I shouldn't include. By doing this, I can't just use the fill button, correct? I got to do each and every one. I do want to make sure that I include the blank cells that are in the range, so if the data is available later, I make sure it's included. This formula is strictly equals average. I'm going to put the fence around my range so that the cows don't get out and refence it. Now, before I go further, I know that this range is not going to change for all of the formulas for this column, for column B. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that range, say enter, come down here. This one should be equals count, not count. Paste it in, hit enter. This one should be equals max. It should find the highest value in the range. Again, there's the range, hit enter, equals min. Select the range, enter, and finally sum. Select the range, or copy the range, sorry, and hit enter. I'm not going to do all of them. I think that would be a waste of time. Certainly you want to do all of them and make sure you can do them efficiently. If indeed the columns were the same range across, we could then at this point highlight all of these and fill over to the right. Financial information, this is the one where we had the stock prices. We wanted to find the purchase total, how much we paid for the stock initially. So we would take the purchase price at the time we bought it, times the number of stocks, and get the total. I'm going to fill this down. I'm then going to audit the last one, which should say something like B12 times C12. Let me see if it does. B12 times C12. So I've audited my data. You want to make sure you do this because remember, one of these numbers out of place just continues to make other numbers not correct. My grand total in this spreadsheet would not be correct, and therefore my spreadsheet has a value of 0. Here I want to find the current total. I'm going to take the number of stocks times how much they're worth today, the current price, and there we are. Now, some of you made the mistake on the profit loss by subtracting the wrong number from the other number. What we want to do is make sure we take the current price, what it's worth today, times, minus what we paid for it. So consequently, this stock, I know that this is correct because if I audit it, it's currently today worth $8,000. It was worth $4,700 previously. Therefore, I know I've made a profit. If I wanted to continue that audit process, I'd come down to one where I see a loss, and I can see I paid $1,200 and some change, and now it's worth $1,000, which means indeed I have lost money. Finally, for the grand total, we're just going to say equals sum of this range. And I see that currently I'm up $143,558 on my portfolio based on the current price. So the first NASCAR one, it says, can you sort the NASCAR drivers list by points? So I'm going to highlight the entire list. I can come and do a quick sort. My data does have headers. That checkbox is there, so I should be able to see points. I'll go largest to smallest. And it looks like our points leader in this data is Jimmy Johnson with 6,652 points. On this NASCAR sheet, NASCAR 2, it says, can you reduce the list to the bottom 20 drivers on points? So the drivers that have the lowest points. I'm going to highlight the list. This is a simple filter function on points. Number filters, become acquainted with these number filters, folks. There's top 10, but I know I can make that bottom 10 and therefore make it bottom 20 and get the drivers with the 20 drivers with the lowest total points. On NASCAR 3, it wants me to sort the list by driver last name and most top 10 finishes. As you can see, the first thing I notice, my data has their full name, so I need to insert some columns, and I'll need to do some text to columns so that I split up their name, because I can't sort currently by last name as it's the name after the first name. I'll come to here, text to columns. It is delimited. Looks like it's delimited by a space, so there's space. Why did I do that extra column? Because I've got a couple folks like Dale Earnhardt Jr. that have Jr. in them. I'll say next, finished, and there we are. Now I can come up here and say driver first, driver last. I'll even put in driver middle, although I'm not going to sort by it. Now I can do the sorting that was asked for. I'll highlight the entire range of data. I'll do a sort. My first sort will be by driver last, A to Z. I'll add a level. The next sort is top 10 finishes. I'm going to go largest to smallest. I'll say OK. And then in order to audit my data, well, here's Kurt and Kyle Busch. And indeed, Kurt Busch has 21 top 10s, and his brother Kyle has 13. So I know it's sorted correctly the way I was asked to complete the assignment. On LPGA, it says insert a function that will return the words under par if the player's total score is 215 or less, which means less than or equal to 215. Otherwise, return par or over. So if they're under par, I'm going to come up here. I am going to use the function dialog box. I'm going to grab that if statement. And it says if the total score is less than or equal to 215, I'm going to return under par. Otherwise, I'm going to return par or over. Remember that when you type text, it'll automatically put the quotations around it. I do it because I want to make sure that I'm clear on understanding myself exactly what I expect the formula to do. This is like some of those formulas, the VLOOKUP and HLOOKUP formulas, where you have to put true if you want a close match or false if you want an exact match. Well, if I type that in, I know exactly what I'm looking for. In this case, to go audit this, I'll come here. 214 was less than or equal to 215. I get under par. As soon as it hits 216, I get par or over. This one says insert a function that will return the word even if the player was E, notice the quotes, even in today's round. So I'm looking at today's round. Otherwise, return not even. Again, this is a true, false. I'm looking for, is it true that this person is even today? This would be false. I would return not even, correct? So it's another if statement, because if statements test to true or false. So my logical test is to test this cell here to see if it's equal to the letter E. If it is, I'm going to say even. Otherwise, not even. So this one should be not even. I'll say okay. I'll fill this down. Looks like I have a E right there. So indeed my formula is working. I'll fill it the rest of the way down. I might quickly audit another E. There's even. Everything else looks correct. On this one, it says insert a function in the yellow cell above that will return the word average, or return the average total score for players who scored under par, less than 72 in round one. So it's an average if I only have one criteria, that is, in round one, did they score less than 72? I'll come up here. Formula that I'm looking for is average if, not average ifs. if I have 2 or more criteria, I'm going to say average if. Range, I want to make sure I read this, is the range of cells you want evaluated, not the range that I want averaged. So let's see, we're looking at round 1. I'm going to go up here. This is the range of cells that I want evaluated. I am looking for less than 72. And the range that I want to average total scores. So I'll highlight that range. I'll say OK. So the average total score for players who scored less than 72 in round 1, they ended up with a resulting total score of 208. LPGA 4, it says insert a function in the yellow cell that will sum the winnings for all players who scored less than par, less than 72 in all 3 rounds. So here I have 3 criteria. Now remember, I can't just say, hey, check these and see if all of them are less than 72. I've got to check each one, because what I'm looking for is players that scored less than 72 in all 3 rounds. So this is an average if s function. Or actually not an average function, sorry, a sum if s function. I want to sum the winnings. Sum if s. So the sum range is the actual range that I want to sum in this case. Let me put that right there. Yeah. Nope. Let me move it over a little bit. The range I want to sum is this right here. The first criteria range is round 1. Round 1 should be the criteria of less than 72. The second criteria, round 2. Again, less than 72. And round 3, which should be less than 72. Now, I know that this is dollar signs, so do a little critical thinking there. It's $889,140 were won by players who scored less than 72 in all 3 rounds. Well, amazingly, look at the first few people on this list. Less than 72. Okay, so for LPGA 5, I'm going to insert a function in the yellow cell above that will count the number of players who were under par in today's round. Well, if they're under par, they have a negative value. And I want to count the number of players based on that single criteria. I'm going to come over here and say count if. I happen to have it right there. Count if. I'm going to count the range. For the criteria, less than 0, right? So if they have a negative, they were under par. According to this, there's 42. I could go ahead and audit this data just by counting the ones that have negative values. Number 6 says insert a function in the yellow cell that will average the winnings for every player with a total score of less than or equal to 216. This sounds like an average if function. Average if the player has a total score of less than or equal to 216. I'm going to say average if. The range I want evaluated is the total score. The criteria is that it's less than or equal to 216. 216 or 215? 216. The average range, that's the winnings. So for those players that averaged under par, their average winnings was 22,140. $172.70. Let's build a chart here real quick. It says insert a 3D pie chart below that will represent the totals for each item. The totals for each item, not the grand totals. So I'm going to come right here. I'm going to pick the items minus the total, hit the control key, pick their total values. Notice same number of cells in each column. Insert, pie chart, 3D. Got a nice 3D pie chart that represents the totals. Now, of course, because these totals are so close, I might want to come in here and do labels. Insert some labels to represent the chart better. There we go. Chart 2 says, using the data on the financial information worksheet, create a 3D column chart that represents the profit and loss for each stock. So from the financial, the profit and loss for each stock, 3D column chart. I'm going to pick the stocks, I'm going to pick their profit and loss, insert, column chart, do a 3D column. Now, of course, we've talked about with the losses being so close in the hundreds and this huge gain of 80,000, our chart tends to get skewed a little bit. So one thing we talked about is maybe two charts, one for profit, one for loss, showing the losses because they're smaller, and then making sure that the user knows in what level, in this case thousands for perhaps for profit, hundreds for loss. I think it wanted me to copy that over, so I'm going to copy that chart. Come back over to chart 2. I'll just paste that in. There we go. Let's see what chart 3 says. Insert a 3D column chart that represents the January, March, and May figures for each item. 3D column chart for each item. Notice I'm not picking the totals again. I want January, February, and May. A 3D column. Insert, column, 3D column. So there's the sales for January, February, and May by item. Chart 4, insert a line chart that shows all 3 rounds for each player listed by last name. That should be player listed by last name. Change the axis so that each round is grouped. So we want to group by round. Player last name. All 3 rounds. Line chart. I'll just do a 2D line. There's the chart, but I wanted to group them. Currently, they're grouped by player. I want to group them, so I'll just do switch row column. Here's round 1, here's round 2, here's round 3. Yeah, these are funky charts, but you should still be able to do them. I certainly wouldn't present the data this way on a professional presentation. I would pick a different chart and make them look better. So that's it for part 1. We'll jump to lookup and do part 2 in just a minute.